An NBA trade actually happened, and it actually did not involve Kevin Durant. Desmond Bane got traded? What? We're going to talk about that. But before we get started, I want to tell you guys to hit that subscribe button, like, comment, and share, and to continue to support my channel. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. We actually have an NBA trade. And it involved Desmond Bane, of all people. Desmond Bane of the Memphis Grizzlies got traded to the Orlando Magic. And it was a little bit of a surprise trade. You know, that happened considering the fact that, hey, man, we're still in the NBA Finals. I mean, NBA trades don't happen during the finals. You know, typically NBA trades that involve players, they usually happen the week of the draft. You know, when the NBA Finals is over. But we actually had an NBA trade. And it was a little bit of a surprise. A little bit of a, you know, it was a surprise trade to some degree. Like I said, Desmond Bane got traded from the Memphis Grizzlies to the Orlando Magic for 4 unprotected, well, technically, you know, the reporting will tell you 4 unprotected first-round picks. And the Grizzlies also got back Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who's a veteran wing player, and they got back Cole Anthony, who's a backup guard. You know, so the Magic traded the 16th pick in this year's draft, technically, basically. They traded the 16th pick in this year's draft. They traded a 2026 pick from the Suns, which is kind of like a swap in which the Wizards get the better of that pick, and I guess the Magic, which is now going to the Grizzlies. The Grizzlies get the worst of that pick between whether basically like if the Suns and Wizards, like whoever finishes with the worst record between the Phoenix Suns and the Wizards. I think the team with the worst record gets that pick goes to the Wizards, and then the team that finishes with the best record between those two, I think that pick goes to the Grizzlies. And so whatever, they get that pick, and they also get the 2028 unprotected pick and the 2030 unprotected pick. And I think they get a swap in 2029. And so it's a lot. It's a lot, you know, for Desmond Bane, who is now an Orlando Magic. And so, you know, when I look at this trade, I want to take the Grizzlies angle first. When you look at this trade, and for the Memphis Grizzlies, this makes a lot of sense. You know, when you look at their team, you know, their team had an interesting year. The first half of the year for the Grizzlies, it was basically a tale of two halves for the Grizzlies. The first half of the year, the Grizzlies looked like a team that was going to be in contention in the Western Conference. I think they were like a top 4 seed in the West. They were, I think at one point they were like 38-16. And so the Grizzlies, the first half of the year looked like a really good team. And then the latter half of the year, they fired Taylor Jenkins. They go a little bit of a downward spiral. Their team just falls apart. They still make the playoffs and they still get out of the play-in, but it just they lose. They get swept by the Thunder, and their team just didn't look the same. You know, Ja Morant, I would argue, probably had his worst season as a pro. You know, this wasn't a particularly good Ja Morant year. He struggled staying healthy again. You know, he had some gripes with this new offense that the Grizzlies were running. He didn't look like peak superstar Ja Morant this year. You know, and so he didn't have his best year. And overall, when you look at the team, like they weren't good. Like it's clear watching the Grizzlies, like that something needed to change with their team. And, you know, considering the fact that Jaren Jackson, like he was the best player on the team, and he had an all NBA caliber year, and he didn't make the all NBA team, but he could have. And so you figure that the Grizzlies probably isn't going to move him. They're not going to move him. Ja Morant, despite his down year, I mean, he's still Memphis' franchise player and the face of the franchise. And so it would be hard to move off of Ja Morant considering the fact that like he's the guy for the franchise. Despite the ups and the downs and the unreliability and the health concerns and all that, he's still uber talented. He's still when he's peak Ja Morant, he's still a top 15-ish player in the league or talent. And so it's just hard to move off a guy like that. And also with Ja Morant, if we're just going to be honest with ourselves, even if the Grizzlies wanted to move off of him, his value wasn't going to be high because, number one, the league is filled with point guards, And number two, with Ja Morant, like I said, he's coming off his worst season. And with small guards as is, like it's just, I don't think teams in the league have that appetite, or at least most teams. They don't have an appetite to build around small point guards who kind of need the ball, And so I think Ja Morant's trade value would have been difficult for them to move, even if they wanted to move off of him. And so you move Desmond Bane, who he's probably their third best player, all things considered. And so you move him. They get all the picks. They got 4 first-round picks. I know people over-exaggerate with the unprotected picks. It really wasn't it's really not an unprotected pick. The pick they got this year is a 16th pick. So it's not really an unprotected pick. But they did get a lot of picks, like I mentioned before. And so you got the picks. And for Memphis, you get to retool their team, transition your team. I would imagine that this coming season, I think this is going to be a little bit of a transitional bridge type of year for the Grizzlies. Kind of similar to what my Atlanta Hawks went through this past year, when they traded DeJounte Murray and people thought, oh, they're going to trade Trae Young or they're going to keep Trae Young. They end up keeping Trae Young. They got Dyson Daniels. They got a couple of first-round picks. And it was, they drafted Reese, a rookie. And it was basically a transitional year, and it went pretty, that's outside of the injuries. It went pretty well for the Hawks. It was a positive, progressing year. And so I would anticipate the Grizzlies going through something similar to that. Now, they're in the Western Conference, so it's going to be a little bit tough. But look, man, I think the Grizzlies are still going to – I don't think this is a thing where the Grizzlies are going to tank. I think people are kind of making an assumption that, they moved Desmond Bane. Oh, they're going to move Jaren Jackson or Ja Morant. No. Calm down, people. It's not happening. They're going to keep Jaren Jackson. They're probably going to extend him because I think he's eligible for like $200+ million. And so I would look for the Grizzlies to extend Jaren Jackson. And I think they're going to keep Ja Morant because, again, Ja Morant's the franchise player. He's their face. And the city of Memphis loves him. And so I think it will be hard to move off of him. And plus, if I'm the Grizzlies, I don't think I need to move off of Ja Morant. Like, let's see what he can do next season. Let's see if he can have a bounce back season. If he can get a little bit more acclimated, a little bit more healthy. He can work on his game. Like, let's see if Ja Morant can bounce back, from this season. Plus, if you're the Memphis Grizzlies, I don't think you have much of a choice anyway. Because Ja Morant's trade value is not super high, even if you wanted to move him. And so why not just keep him around, see how things look, if he can bounce back, and go on from there. Like you have all the picks. You got Orlando's picks. You got a pick in 2026. You still have your own picks, so you got a lot of picks. Maybe for the Grizzlies, maybe eventually in a year or two, you look to go the other way. Maybe you find another guy that you can piece around Jaren Jackson and Ja Morant and Zach Edey and Jalen Wells and all of this interesting young talent that you have, and maybe you find something better. And so I get it for the Memphis Grizzlies. I think the Memphis Grizzlies are in pretty good shape moving forward. I'm not saying they're going to be a better team next season because we all know the Western Conference is hella deep. I mean, look, man, the Oklahoma City Thunder, the Nuggets, the Rockets, the Lakers, the Warriors, the Clippers, the T-Wolves. The Spurs should get better. The Clippers, Warriors, the You look at a young team like a Portland who's showing some sign. Like there's a lot. The Western Conference is crazy deep, and so it's gonna be tough for the Memphis Grizzlies to some extent. But I think all things considered, I think what they did was justifiable, and I think they're in pretty good shape as far as like their flexibility and the maneuverability and the amount of options that they can go towards. And so I think this was a pretty good trade for the Grizzlies, all things considered. Now for the Magic, very interesting trade for the Magic. Very interesting trade. I think for the Magic, I think this Desmond Bane trade tells me two things about them. I think number one, they don't want a point. They don't want a point guard. They don't want a small guard that can, number one, take the ball out of Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner's hands. Those two, with Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner, those are Orlando's guys. Those are the guys that Orlando's going to run their offense and their structure of their team towards. Those are the guys. And the Magic did not want, like, I know people wanted to pencil Trae Young, my guy, towards Orlando. It wasn't going to happen because Orlando was like, no, we don't want to take the ball out of Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner's hands. We want to play through those two. Those two is what our team is about. We're going to run our offense through those two. And so, and it makes some sense, considering that those two are super talented or uber talented wing players and forwards. And so I don't think the Magic ever wanted a point guard, all things considered. If it was a point guard, it needed to be the right point guard that can play a little off the ball. And so I think that was one thing that stood out to me when I look at this trade is what Orlando valued. And I think the other thing about Orlando, what they valued, they wanted size and defense. They don't want any defensive liabilities. I've mentioned this as soon as that trade happened. The Orlando Magic want to build their team like the Boston Celtics. They want to be the Boston Celtics 2.0. Whereas with the Boston Celtics, it's Jaylen Brown, it's Jason Tatum at the forward spots. They both are 6'7" to 6'9". And then at your guard spot, it's Derek White and Drew Holiday, just guards that are physically built, that have size, 6'5", 6'4" in between them. That's what the Boston Celtics want to build that's how the Boston Celtics have built their team, with size at the forward spots and size at the guard spot. And you compare that to the Orlando Magic, you got Franz Wagner and Paolo Banchero, both are 6'10", big, physically gifted forwards and wings. And then you look at their guards, Desmond Bane's about 6'5" and a half, 6'6", and Jalen Suggs is 6'4", 6'5". Big physical guards. They don't want any defensive weak links on their team. Their identity is defense, and this is what they want to plan on continuing to build. It's just having a defensive identity. And you look at the trade market, I think the Magic looked at Desmond Bane and just realized that this is the best guy on the market. And plus, look, guys like Desmond Bane with his prototype, guys like him are going to cost a lot. And I think the Magic just looked at Desmond Bane and said, man, we're never going to find a dude that's more perfect than this guy for how we're trying to build. And we don't have to give up Jalen Suggs or Paolo or Franz to get him. Like we're gonna get this guy because we think this guy's a perfect fit for how we're trying to build. And we're going to give up whatever we can to get them. And they did it. And Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner and Desmond Bane and Jalen Suggs at the 4, 3, 2, and 1 spots. It's a perfect fit. It makes sense. The fit makes sense. And look, I think the Magic gave up a lot, clearly. Like 4 first-round picks. In a swap, it's a lot. It's a lot. But I look at this Magic team, and Desmond Bane is 26. Franz Wagner's 24. Jalen Suggs is 23. and Paolo Banchero's 22. You know, 4 guys between the ages of 26 and 22. You got a young team, young talented team that can grow together for the next few years. And so I like it. They gave up a lot. I get it. It's very expensive. And look, as a Hawk fan that knows a thing or two about giving away too much for a dude that doesn't fit, it can bite you in the butt. It can. And luckily for my Hawks, they were able to recover from the DeJounte Murray mistake by trading for Dyson Daniels and 2 first-round picks. And so it can work badly. You know, we've seen it with the Phoenix Suns. They gave up too much for Kevin Durant, and their team's awful, and they're looking to trade Kevin Durant. You know, the Milwaukee Bucks. They traded for Dame. That hasn't worked out. Now they're kind of screwed long term. You know, and so it can go 2 ways, but it can also go a good way. You know, the Cleveland Cavaliers gave up 3 first-round picks and 2 rotation players and some swaps for Donovan Mitchell. And the Cavs have been good. They've been a very good team. They won 60 games. The Minnesota Timberwolves, when everyone killed them for trading for Rudy Gobert. You know what? It's worked out well for them. And, you know, the Minnesota Timberwolves, back-to-back years, they've been to the Western Conference Finals. And so it can go both ways when you kind of go all in on a certain player. But I think for the Magic, Desmond Bane just makes a lot of sense for their team and for what they need. The Magic needed a guard that can play on the ball and off the ball, who can also pass and play make a little bit. Like they needed a guy to complement Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner. They're 2 star players. And Desmond Bane fits perfectly. This is a guy that averaged over 21 points a game. He shot nearly 50% from the field. He shot over 38% from 3. He averaged 5 assists a game. Like, he fits, and he's an efficient player, and his skill set meshes very well with how Paolo and Franz Wagner like to play. And so it the fit makes sense. And I think over time, like you look at this Magic team, you look at this team on paper, there's no question that this team with Franz Wagner, Paolo Banchero, Desmond Bane, and Jalen Suggs. Now, look, I think they're going to have to figure out their center position long term. You know, is Wendell Carter the long term answer at that spot? Is it Goga Patazzi? Or maybe they have to trade for another guy. Or maybe they draft a guy. Don't forget, they still had that 25th pick in the draft. They still had the 25th pick in the draft. They didn't get that. They didn't give that pick up to get Desmond Bane. And so the Magic probably going to have to figure that center spot out long term. But between those 4 guys that I just named, the Magic should be a top 5 team in the East next season. Like, if you're the Magic, like there's no reason why the Magic at worst shouldn't be one of the top 5 teams in the East next year. And you look at the Eastern Conference, considering what Boston doesn't have, with Jason Tatum being out for most of next season, if not all the next season, who's to say that the Orlando Magic can't get to the NBA Finals next season? They got the talent between those 4. With Paolo, Franz, Jalen Suggs, and Desmond Bane. Like, and this is going to be a theme for this offseason, is that when you look at the Pacers and how they got to and how they're in the NBA Finals with Pascal Siakam and Tyrese Halliburton leading the way, a lot of these teams in the East are going to be like, if the Pacers can do it, why not us? Why not my team? Why not the Magic? Why not the Knicks or the Cavs or the Hawks or the Pistons or, you know, maybe the Heat if they get KD? Like, why not all of these teams? Like, if the Pacers can do it, why not us? That's what all of these teams are going to be thinking when they make moves. And the Orlando Magic trading for Desmond Bane is the perfect example of this. They got their guy. And look, like I said, I think the fit makes perfect sense. The fit makes sense. The cost of guys like Desmond Bane is a lot, and the Magic gave up a lot. And you look at the picks that they gave up. They gave up the 16th pick in this year's draft. Okay, fine, giving that up. They gave up that Phoenix Suns Wizard swap. You look at that pick. That pick in all likelihood feels like a pick that's going to be in a lottery. That could be a top 10 pick. So you give that up. That's a pretty valuable pick. They gave up the 2028 first round pick. You look at that pick, considering how young the Magic are at the moment, the Magic should be a good team by 2028. Should still be a good team. And so you figure that pick probably won't hurt your ass that much not having it. Now, the 2030 pick, which is 5 years out, that pick could be problematic because we don't know how things are going to look in 5 years. 5 years in the NBA is a very long time. It's a very long time. And so giving a pick out like that so far out does have some risk. But I think for the Magic, I think it's worth it. I think for them, I think it's worth them taking a swing on a guy like Desmond Bane. They probably could have gotten a guy cheaper. For years, I've been mentioning them getting Anthony Simons. I've thought Anthony Simons for Orlando would have been a perfect fit. And he probably would have been cheaper compared to Desmond Bane. But you know what? I get why they didn't go to Anthony Simons' route. Because Anthony Simons, for as great of a fit as I thought that he would be offensively, Anthony Simons is 6'2", 6'3". He's a small guard who's, for the most of his career, hasn't really been a good defender. And so you worry about the defense and the size if you pair Anthony Simons with Jalen Suggs, as compared to you get Desmond Bane, who's more physical and taller, who's about 6'5", 6'6". You pairing them with Jalen Suggs, and it makes a lot of sense. You don't lose the defense with that lineup the way that you could potentially do if you traded for an Anthony Simons. And so for Orlando, I get it. I understand what they did. I think it makes sense. Now, I think for this Magic team moving forward, all the pressure is going to be on Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner. Those are the two franchise players for this franchise, for the Magic. What I want to see from Paolo Banchero moving forward is he's got to be more efficient as a scorer. Too many times I watch Paolo Banchero, and he settles for too many of these contested mid-range shots. Dude, you're 6'10", 250. You are big. Get your butt to the basket. Get to the free throw line. Attack the paint. There's not many dudes that can stay in front of you when you commit yourself to getting the ball to the basket, taking the ball to the rack. And so I want to see more of that from Paolo Banchero. And I also want to see him improve his three-point shot. Last season he shot 32% from three. The season before that he shot 33%. Can we get that three-point field goal percentage up to around 36? Somewhere in that range. So I want to see Paolo Banchero improve on that. Just being more aggressive, getting to the rack, and stop settling for mid-range jumpers. And I think for Franz Wagner, I don't know what's happened to his three-point shot. His first 2 years in the NBA, he shot 35 and 36% from three. And the last 2 seasons, he shot below 30% 2 years in a row. So he's been a sub 30% three-point shooter. He's got to find his three ball. And he's got to become a better three-point shooter. And so if both of those two things happen, and both Franz Wagner and Paolo Banchero can become more efficient as scorers, along with what they already have with Bane and Suggs, I think this Magic team can get to the finals, this coming year. They have that ceiling of getting to the conference finals to possibly the NBA finals. They have that kind of ceiling with that talent that they have now. And so I think that's going to be key is can Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner become more efficient as scorers at their size? Can Paolo Banchero can he be more aggressive, getting to the basket more and not settling for these contested mid-range pull-ups that he likes to take? And for Franz Wagner, can he become a better can he become a more consistent three-point shooter? Those are the things I'm going to be looking at. But you look at his roster between those 4 players, And whatever they do at center, I mean, it doesn't get much better than that in the Eastern Conference. I mean, their top end talent is as good as it gets in the Eastern Conference. There's no question about it. And so I think the Orlando Magic got better with this move. And quite frankly, I think this Desmond Bane trade definitely makes a lot of sense for both the Memphis Grizzlies and the Orlando Magic. I think both teams actually benefited from this move. And so, what are y'all thoughts? Y'all agree with me? What are y'all thoughts on this Desmond Bane trade? Y'all like it for the Magic? Y'all like it for the Grizzlies? Y'all hate it for both teams? One, do you hate it for the Magic or the Grizzlies? What y'all think? Man, I would love to hear y'all in the comments. And I would love y'all thoughts on this move. Y'all agree with this move? Y'all love it for both teams? Y'all hate it for both teams? What y'all thoughts? And so I would love to hear y'all in the comments, and I would love y'all thoughts. But that's all I have for today. And we got a trade. Got a fun trade. Interesting trade actually happened. I'm excited about it. And I'm sure there's more to come. But that's all I have for today. And I'll catch you guys in the next episode. Peace.